Hey friend, I'm Danielle Damrell, and I am so grateful that you're listening to the Created Worthy podcast. This show is all about honoring the life stories of women from different ages, beliefs, backgrounds, and experiences. Everyone's got a story, and instead of getting stuck in the trap of unworthiness, this is a safe place for stories to be shared. On this show, we chat about the transformative power of creative processing too, and how we can utilize our God-given creativity with intention to heal, grow, find joy, create simplicity in the midst of our chaotic lives. So pull up a seat at our table, because we are all created worthy. Hello, welcome back to the Created Worthy podcast. Today, I am joined by another worthy warrior, Giselle Carson. Giselle is a dynamic U.S. corporate immigration and compliance attorney renowned for her strategic, client-centered approach in helping employers secure work visas and green cards for global talent. With over 20 years of experience in corporate immigration law, Giselle's experience is matched only by her passion for empowering businesses to thrive in a competitive global market. A two-time immigrant herself, Giselle brings a unique perspective to her work, bridging personal experience with professional excellence. She is the author of Beyond the H-1B, a guide to work visa options, and a best-selling contributing author to All Out Impact. In 2025, she will release her third book, The Corporate Immigration Advantage. I'm excited to talk more about that. Giselle's resilience and determination extend beyond the legal field, though. She is a two-time Ironman triathlete, a five-time triathlon finisher, and a 25-time marathoner who approaches every challenge with the same drive that defines her legal career. As a committed community leader, Giselle serves on prominent boards, is a proud graduate of Leadership Florida and Leadership Jacksonville, and has earned numerous accolades for her contributions. Through her work, Giselle combines a deep experience, personal insight, and boundless energy to help clients navigate complex immigration processes and achieve their goals with confidence. Giselle, thank you so much for joining me on the Created Worthy podcast. I can't wait for my listeners to hear even more about your real life story.
Thank you, Danielle. I'm thrilled to be here with you. And as you mentioned before, we've collaborated, and I'm so grateful for everything that you've taught us as we worked with you on the All Out Impact collaborative book. It was an amazing experience, and you made it seamless. So thank you. So I am thrilled to reconnect with you here.
Yes, me too. I've been looking forward to this. One of my favorite part about running collaborative books is that at the end, I always give authors the opportunity to come and share on my podcast. And you were one of the first ones to be like, yes, I'm doing it. I'm going to schedule. And I just am so grateful because your story, even that I've heard through All Out Impact, has inspired me so much. It's been something that I've carried. So I'm excited for my listeners to really get to hear how incredible the things you've done are. It's so empowering. So let's jump into it. Can
Okay.
you take us back to the beginning of your journey? Where were you born and what was life like for you growing up?
Sure. So I was born in Cuba, La Habana, and I lived in the same house that my grandmother, my grandfather, my aunt, my uncle, my mom, my dad, my cousin, we all lived in the same house. Thank God it was a pretty big home, but it's very typical for families in Latin America to live together, and particularly in Cuba. And so I grew up with them, and all the way until I was 15 years old. At that point, I was 15 years old. When you're in the Latin Hispanic community, that is a quinceañera, which is like the 16th. sweet 16th here. So for that, for a celebration of my birthday, my parents told me we were going to a trip to Czechoslovakia for which I have never been outside of the country. It's very difficult to take a trip. It's a very different, it's a very different system. So there is no travel agencies, no planes
Yeah.
that you can buy to go anywhere. But my parents had managed to get this ticket for all three of us, or three tickets to go on a trip to Czechoslovakia for 2 weeks and
Wow.
then come back. And that was the beginning of a big transformation in my life that ended up first in Canada and then later to the United States.
Wow. Okay. So when you took that first trip to Czechoslovakia, what was that for? Was there a certain vacation spot that they were looking to go to, or were they like just wanting to get out of the country?
Yeah, it was a preset tour, so
Yeah.
tour package basically that they had. So there were other people on the plane with us that were in the same experience.
Group.
They
Yeah.
continued on, and we stayed in Canada. But yeah, so that and the plan was after it's a planned trip. You go, you come back, and when you come back, you resume your life. But that didn't happen to me. Everything that my parents never told me that we were not coming back. And
Okay.
so I left Cuba, told my family, my paternal side of the family, they were all in Cuba, and I said goodbye. I'll see you back in 2 weeks. I sang to my friends. We closed the door, went to the airport, again thinking we were coming back, or at least I was. My
Yeah.
parents had a different. Um,
Wow. So
yeah.
you literally went on what you thought was your very first vacation and never came
Mm.
back.
Correct. My very first vacation, and potentially at that time, I thought my only vacation outside of the country ever.
Yeah.
So I was super excited to go and super excited also to come back and from that experience. But
Yeah.
yeah,
How
that just
old
never
were
happened.
you?
15,
Okay, so
15.
that
So
was like for your yeah, that was for your quinceañera. Okay.
yeah.
Wow. I can't imagine how confusing that would be as a
Yeah.
15-year-old. And I'm sure at 15, you're like, I have all these friends. How did you handle that? Like when you did find out that you weren't going back,
So
what did you do?
when we landed in Canada, my mother went to one of those boutiques that you have in the airports.
Yeah.
And she actually, I don't know, my mom, I guess my determination in life, or my character that has a lot of determination. I'm sure I get a lot of the genes from her. But anyway, she went to one of those boutiques and said to one of the ladies that we wanted to request asylum in Canada and what to do. And
Wow.
sh- from that boutique, the what is basically CBP here in the United States, the Customs and Border Protection, their equivalent in Canada, came and picked us up at that boutique, and then
Mm.
basically escorted us out of that area of the airport where we were. So what happened? The plane landed in Canada to refuel. It wasn't a big plane. They knew, my mom knew, and my dad, that they needed to refuel somewhere. They had no idea where it was going to be. It it could have been in Nova Scotia. It could have been in who knows where.
Right.
But it happened to be Montreal, Canada, where we stopped. And they don't tell you that either in Cuba, because they are afraid that things like what happened, like what we did, would happen, that people just stay. Anyway, we stayed in Montreal. The police came, picked us up. They held our passports, blah, blah, blah. And my mom said to me, we have issues with our passports, or there's something with the passports. We're going to stay here for a few days. And then when that issue is resolved, we'll get back on the next plane and continue our trip. I said, okay, that good enough for me for that time.
Yeah.
Thank God it was summer in Canada, so it was nice.
Oh,
And again,
yeah.
I'd never been outside of the country, Cuba, so this was another little fun experience. And after a few days in Canada, my mom started going. They have very good programs for immigrants in Canada. At least I know they still do, and they did back then.
Mhm.
So there's agencies that are set up for where you go for assistance, where they give you coupons for groceries. We have nothing. We had the clothes that we had on. The luggage stayed on the plane. Basically, we had nothing. We had no money. We had no phones. We had no
My
family in Canada. We
gosh.
had no connections with anybody. It was just like the three of us and nothing else. So, and that is part of you talked about me being a two-time immigrant, and as my career right now, that's what I do, corporate immigration. So I've been there. I know how
Mhm.
stressful this whole process is. I know how difficult it is to immigrate to a new country, and I have nothing, literally. Most of my
Mhm.
clients that I work with they come here with they go to school, that there is some
Yeah.
planned process. Many don't, but many do have a plan. Ours was just like, okay, here you are, begin life from zero practically. So again, my mom started going to the agencies and the interviews, tried to find us an apartment. And then I was like, wait, this is starting to look a little bit too permanent. It doesn't
Yeah.
sound like we're going back on anytime soon. And so I was like, Mom, what's going on? And she was like, we decided that we're going to stay here. Things that we don't want to go back. The situation is really bad. And this is better for us. I'm like, what do you mean
Did
this is
you
better for us?
did you know that the situation in Cuba was what it was?
That's a really good question. No,
Okay.
because I was so brainwashed, literally
Mhm.
so brainwashed. I would for always remember when President Reagan was the assassination attempt, whatever. That was
Mhm.
like a big deal. It was almost like a celebration in Cuba. And
Really?
oh yeah, anything. So we were like the message was like, imagine if this can happen to a president in the United States, imagine what happens to the people that don't have that kind of protection. So in my mind, you couldn't walk around the streets by yourself, kids couldn't go to school because they would get killed, or unless you had a huge amount of money, you couldn't do anything. I was totally brainwashed. And you don't
Mhm.
know anything else because you don't have exposure to anything different. It's what they control the media, they control everything. So any information you get is whatever they want you to know.
Yeah.
And again, I was so washed that, yeah, for me, when my mom said that to me, I was like, no way, I'm going back myself. Literally, I said that to her. I'm going to go to the embassy because I knew there was one in Montreal and ask them to take me back. And so they took turns at night making sure that I didn't escape the apartment that we were in, and that I would just go back to ask the Cuban government to take me back and leave them behind. And then eventually it was very hard. Like I said, we had nothing. My parents, both of them had an education and had good jobs in Cuba. That's why we were able to leave. We started with absolutely nothing, cleaning offices and whatnot. I would go
Wow.
to school during the day and I would go clean offices with them in the evening. And as I was writing the book that I'm writing now is a combination of the legal technicalities of immigration, but it's really a lot more about the mindset of what it takes to go through the immigration system. And I talk about my story. And it's been really fascinating because it's all the memories that come back. And I remember cleaning offices with my parents at night and help people. And we have pictures of ourselves in the office with your family or vacations. And I used to look at those pictures and think, oh my God, would I ever have that kind of life?
Mhm.
Because to me, that was just dreams, like to have
Right.
to see people on a cruise it was just a life that I, I never thought it was possible. And here I'm
Yeah.
looking at the desk and seeing that and going, wow, this is eventually at one point, I hope I can get there. and here I am. But yeah, and that's the life of many immigrants.
Wow. I don't know if maybe did you share this part of your story in okay. Because yeah, I'm like, I don't think I've ever heard this. And there are just I cannot imagine how it felt to be surprised by the fact that you were going on what you thought was your very first vacation and ended up in a country that you didn't even think you were going to visit and with literally nothing and then being
Yeah,
told like this is where we're going to live because it's not safe back at home and you're like I felt fine. I want to go home. Like just so many there's just so much there that I it just gives me such a deep respect for little Giselle, for you as
yeah,
a little girl, because that's not something that's easy to process, but especially not something that's easy to come to use as a pivotal a pivotal
yeah. You
point in
could,
your
you could,
journey that turns into your passion, right? Like you've actually used that to grow your desire to learn, to help other people, to give people the resources and tools and legal support that they need to navigate these types of situations more effectively and with less fear, right? And so I'm so inspired by you. I How did you end up going back to school when you got to Canada? So you were working with your family, you were doing cleaning offices, you were, I'm sure, dumbfounded. What the heck is going on? I went on a vacation, now I'm cleaning offices in a totally different country, and I guess I live here. So, how did normalcy come back into your life once you got to Canada?
yeah. And again, going back literally as I'm talking to you and as I was writing my book, some of this stuff, which memories that you forget, I landed in Canada, it was the summer, but eventually it got cold and windy. And some
Snowy.
of it's snowy, yes. I had vision. We didn't have a car. We rely on public transport. And one of the buildings that my parents were cleaning was out. It was about an hour uh, from our house on public transport. And once we got off the bus, we had to walk. The bus didn't stop right in front of the building. And I remember this night, you clean offices in the evening, you don't clean them during the day. So it was dark, it was snowstorm, and we were like bundled up with all of our stuff and the boots that we had acquired at the church because we had
Yeah.
gone to a church to get clothes and
Clothes.
boots.
Yeah.
We had none of that. We had no money to buy it either. I have tremendous respect for the people that donate things to Goodwill and to churches and to all of that, because for us, for a whole year or more, actually probably 2 or 3 years, that was our only way to survive.
Mm.
Just the money that my parents made was not enough for to buy a whole new wardrobe for each
Yeah.
one of us. So going back to your question, again, the system in Canada, at least at the time, was set up, and I know it's changed some since, but when you were, I wouldn't say I was a child, I was 15 years old, but they had schools that were they called them immersion schools. So
Okay.
for first year, when you were there, you were placed, and again, the social services that were, we had a social service person that was assigned to us, and she had other families, and they guided us as to what the process was and what we needed to do. Again, kudos to all of these social services and everything that we have in this country and abroad
Mhm.
to help people like us. And it's really needed to help people integrate and assimilate, because otherwise you're lost
Yeah.
completely. So
Did
they,
did you speak English at
no,
all?
no,
Okay.
or
So you had to
French.
learn no French, no English. You had to learn, and Canada is a little bit more complicated because they do have two primary languages. So in immersion school, is
So
that
the,
really what the focus was like to immerse you in the
correct,
language?
correct.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you're in that school is only but immigrants, all from all over the world. And
Wow.
yeah, I don't know how many we were. So there were classes, and you would go from a French class to basic math to basic whatever literature to basic to just the basics so that you could learn the language while you were also learning and
Yeah.
assimilating in school. And the idea was when you graduated from there, then you would, the next year, you would be immersed into a regular their education system, whatever you landed into their system. So during that year, I learned French, a little bit of English, went to school during the day, and helped my parents in the evening. And they also worked during the day. My mom was actually working at a kind of a refugee center. Eventually she got, because she spoke French.
Okay.
So was able to get that job, and basically she was helping people like us as
Yeah.
after she got kind of used to the, because she spoke Spanish, so she could help the Spanish speaking immigrants, and she spoke some French enough to get around and manipulate. So they did that during the day. My father was a janitor also at another center, and then in the evening we cleaned the other things.
Yeah.
When I went to school, so that was our life for the first few years in Canada. So
Wow.
once I
Okay.
graduated from that immersion school, then I went into what is in Quebec is CJAP, which is basically college
Okay.
here, like basic college, like 2 years of college, so that I could then go into university. And that was
Okay.
the transfer. Yeah.
Okay. So after you, I assume you graduated high school. Is there like a process for graduating high school? Okay. So you graduated high school. Go ahead.
So I had finished high school in Cuba. I just had to get
Oh,
my I had to get my kind of my equivalency to that. So while I was in that immersion school, I was learning the language, and I was also taking the courses that I needed to get my equivalency of high school to then
okay.
go to, that's how that worked.
Okay. So that's actually pretty early, at least for the American
System.
version of system, education system. Exactly. You've got your equivalent. You decide you're going to go to university, I assume. So tell me, what I'd really love for you to tell me is, at what point did you immigrate then to the US? And was that part of your education timeline? Did you end up coming to the US because of education, or was it because of something else?
Yeah. So part of I speak, or I haven't, my grandmother is an inspiration, and I do
Mm.
mention her on the All Out Impact book.
Yeah.
She never graduated from high school. She never graduated. She never got past high school, or graduated even from high school. And for her, for as long as I remember, her biggest goal in life was for my mother, for my aunt, for me, for my cousin to get a degree. That was ingrained in me forever. Like you need to get your education. No one can take that away from you. That is
Yeah.
yours to take. So that was one of the things that my biggest fear, again, from it being in Canada, was that I wouldn't be able to go back to school and get an education, because that's what I was told in Cuba, that wouldn't
Yeah.
happen. I soon realized that wasn't true.
Hey there, friends. Are you ready to rise fully into your calling as a leader? I want to introduce you to Heart Soul Strength, a ministry dedicated to equipping leaders like you to serve with purpose, resilience, and joy, fully aligned with God's will for your life and the people you have specifically been called to lead. Whether you are leading a company from your home while you're raising small kids, or you're the leader of a Fortune 500 company, I want to personally invite you to our first immersive event, the Rise Leadership Conference, happening November 12th through 14th, 2025 in Waco, Texas, at the stunning Deerfield Estates, just 10 minutes from downtown Waco. This will be a weekend of worship, actionable workshops, connections, networking, and fellowship with women who share the same anointing on their lives, but maybe at different levels. It's designed to recharge your heart, soul, and strength, and to empower you to lead with clarity and confidence. So whether you're able to join us in person or simply just want to support the mission of Heart, Soul, Strength, where we are called to equip leaders, your donation makes a difference. Visit heartsoulstrength.org to learn more, to donate, or to grab your ticket to Rise. Let's rise into leadership the way that God intended, together. You are created worthy, and through Him, you have the heart, soul, and strength to make a kingdom impact in whatever role you're serving in. God's got you, and you got this.
So finished the immersion school, finished my 2 years in college in Montreal. And then I apply, I really, so you don't have a choice at the beginning when you go to school in Quebec, you have to go to French school. And at the time I hated it, but I understand why, because otherwise everybody would want to go to English just because it's more of a global language. And they would lose their cultural identity that they're so proud of. So all the immigrants coming to Quebec, the first thing that if you decide to learn English after, which I did, that's your choice. But initially, you learn French.
Yeah.
Did that. And then when I started applying for university, I decided I'm going to try to go to an English university. A few things. One, I knew there was going to be potentially a little bit less competition because I was in Quebec. So University of Montreal, University of Quebec, they certainly had the majority of the spots. The French Canadians were not going to apply to an English university necessarily.
Yeah.
Whatever. I ended up going to McGill, which is a very renowned university. So the competition was just as high. But that brought me to English school, which that was my first time ever going to school in English. So my notes are in Spanish, in English, in French, whatever my brain could assimilate.
Yeah.
That's what it was, just everywhere. I had an interest, passion. I would say interest. It wasn't passion like now. It was an interest on wellness and fitness and just something that I did not have in Cuba. But it was something that, again, I became exposed to in Canada and liked it. I applied to physical therapy school, and I applied at the University of Montreal, and I applied to McGill. I got accepted at McGill. And so did my 3 years of physical therapy there, graduated from McGill, started practicing as a physical therapist in Montreal, and got married. My husband was also going to school with me.
Okay.
So we both graduated together, and he lived in Canada. He lived in Ottawa, or his family lived in Ottawa.
Okay.
So he moved to Ottawa after graduation, and we got married. And then I moved to Ottawa. And then my parents ended up moving to Florida. And so pretty much my family was in Florida. His family was in Canada.
What drove them to Florida? Why did they
My
want to
parents?
move? Yeah.
My parents? Oh my gosh.
It's closer to the Cuba, at least, temperature.
Right. Because as much as I think we have a huge respect for Canada and the opportunities that they
Of
open
course.
for a new life for us. But for them, the La Habana, Cuba, or Montreal, Miami, it was closer to home. I have my grandmother lived in Miami. My grandfather was in Miami. So they wanted to get closer to families. So they went to Miami. And then Jeff and I were going to Miami every time we had vacations. That's where we ended up. And I was like, eventually, Jeff, can we turn that around? Let's vacation in Canada and let's live in Miami. Now, immigrating. So this is where
Yeah.
this stage, I was 21 years old and graduated from PT school, and trying to figure out how do we immigrate to the United States. It wasn't easy. It was like, how do we do this? Like many immigrants, we start looking at, okay, what are the options that we have? Work visas, family visas. Because I was already married and over 21, my parents they could petition for me, but it would take forever because I was
Yeah.
already married. And they actually needed to become US citizens before they could petition for me, or the whole immigration thing. Then one time we had decided, okay, we're going to figure out how to do this. We came to the United States and we came to Florida. We toured Florida. We went to Orlando. Came to Jacksonville, down to Daytona, down to Miami, and then went back to West Coast, Naples, St. Pete, Tampa, Orlando, back to da da da. And as we stopped in the various places, we were trying to decide, okay, what city we would like to live in. And when we were in Daytona, we actually went, the Halifax Medical Center had PT openings in the newspaper. Back then, you looked at the newspaper for job opportunities. And so we decided, what do we have to lose? Let's apply. And so while on vacation, we went and interviewed for those two positions as physical therapist. And we were like, okay, if we can get you here, would you take the jobs? And we were like, yeah, sure. So they connected us with an immigration attorney to this day that I know and I still have a good relationship with. So he did our paperwork to get us to the United States on work visas.
Yeah.
And so I came in as a physical therapist, both of us as physical therapists to work. So that goes to the employment-based immigration route. That's
Yeah.
how we came into the United States.
So that's how you got here. Yeah.
Mhm. And again, it was another kind of, at that point, of course, it was more planned. We were better set up. It wasn't like, you land in Canada now. But it's still, I remember to this day, we moved to the United States with a little trailer. We had a truck and a red little truck and a trailer. And the trailer had the biggest thing on the trailer was our gym equipment that we didn't want to sell.
Yes.
That was all the possessions that we had when we came down. It was just like, oh my gosh. And we went into a little apartment that was about 2 miles from the hospital. And again, they at the hospital recommended, okay, this is where our new people that start working here, this is where they go and rent. And we were there for about a year at that apartment until we eventually bought our first home ever in the United States. But
Wow.
No, it certainly felt very different.
Yeah.
It was just scary though. I
Yeah.
guess I always tell people, like, your first marathon, first Ironman, whatever, is very scary because you have no idea. The second one is a little easier just because you've been there. So it was we came from Canada where the system to some degree was certainly a lot closer to the United States than Cuba. But still, we had no idea of what we were going to be facing. And in opening a bank account, and we were still immigrants on a work visa, which has a lot of hurdles that even though you're making a salary and the bank won't open a bank account or won't give you a credit, it's just, and you don't think about it if you live here and that has been your whole life. But we couldn't believe, oh my God, we both have good physical therapy positions. We've been earning money for a whole year. And we had a very difficult time getting a mortgage for our first home because we didn't have a green card.
I see. So talk to me a little bit about your career pivot, because you came in as a physical therapist with your husband, but you eventually obviously transitioned from physical therapy to corporate immigration law. So what drove that transition and how did you decide on that? How did you decide that you wanted to pursue law?
Yeah. So as a physical therapist, so I started, like I said, working in Halifax. And then gradually, my husband doesn't like to manage people, he likes
Mhm.
the patient interaction, all of that. I think I always wanted, what's next? What's next? What's the career ladder, or where can I make the bigger impact? So I moved from treating physical therapy to a director of PT of physical therapy, then to a director of rehab. As the director of rehab, I oversaw physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy. So those were all under my kind of leadership. And I was involved in the hiring and supporting therapists from just like me, like I was on a work visa. So I had occupational therapists and physical therapists that were from Colombia, they were from primarily South America and the Philippines. So I was now on the other side
Yeah.
of managing the part of the immigration process that an employer helps facilitate in collaboration with the attorney. And so I always say it's a three-legged stool. The foreign nationals, foreign workers have a role. They have a piece on the puzzle. The HR or director of rehab, whoever it is, the employer has a piece, and then the attorney. So I was part of that, and also seeing them again, facilitating their integration into the system. Many of them were coming to me right from Colombia or from the Philippines, and they also
Yeah.
had to adapt. So anyway, after I got to that level, my husband had decided he wanted to do a PhD. The equivalent of a PhD is called a doctor in physical therapy. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I'm done with physical therapy. We don't want to have all the eggs on the same basket. I love
Yeah.
physical therapy to this day, but I was looking for something else that I could have again, continue to, what's the next biggest impact I can make? And decided to go to law school. So while he was doing his DPT, doctor in physical therapy, work during the day, studying in the evening, at night, that I did the same. I went to law
Mm.
school and actually worked as a physical therapist because I was very afraid of being in a huge amount of debt.
Yeah.
So I continued to work as a physical therapist to pay for my law degree, and went to law school part-time, which I was able to do at that time. And I did that for a few years. So
Wow.
going back to my landing in Canada and going to school during the day and going to work at night. Here I work during the day and I studied at
Yeah.
night.
Just the
Life,
reverse. You're just a
yeah,
hard worker.
yeah, life has a pattern. So here was the pattern again in a little reverse way.
Yeah.
And I did that until I graduated from law school. And at that point, I started practicing it. So again, I have a physical therapy background, so I'm medical. I started practicing as a litigator in medical litigation.
Okay.
And our clients were hospitals, were physicians, and I was involved in preparing physicians from India, nurses from the Philippines, therapists from South America, whatever, for their depositions.
Yeah.
And then somebody is doing the work to get this professionals into the United States. Who?
Yeah.
So I asked my clients, our clients were the hospitals at that point, who's doing this work for you? And they were like, no, we're in Jacksonville. At that point, I was in Jacksonville. No one here because there's no corporate immigration attorneys here. And I
Mm.
thought, well, we're going to change that. So
Mm.
I decided to start taking courses in corporate immigration, joined the American Immigration Lawyers Association, went to as many conferences that I could attend, and
Yeah.
again managed to learn, had a few mentors, because no one at the firm that I practice, immigration was not an area of practice there. So
Mm.
I started the practice with myself, and I was with it. Actually got an assistant that actually was the assistant that I had as my legal assistant for litigation. But she was from Puerto Rico, and she had tremendous interest in immigration. So between the two of us, we started the practice and started doing the work for our clients of the firm. And then eventually started branching out. And we went from just the two of us to now I have a team of 3 paralegals and an immigration specialist and a legal assistant and myself as the core
Wow.
group. But it's taken, sometimes you say, a success is not an overnight thing. It took a lot of work from everybody involved, a lot of support from many people, my whole life. I am so grateful for all the support that has come my way, insights, and being optimistic about
Yeah.
what the future brings. Because with all the challenges that we all have, we could all decide we're done, we're not doing anymore, or this is not worth it.
Yeah.
And you just say, what is your goal in life? What are we here to do? Um, and I hear, as I stand here today, again, I know that we're going to have a very rough immigration year coming up with many changes that I'm already seeing in the processing with immigration services in the United States.
Yeah.
But I also believe that the country and the employers and the foreign nationals need people like me, immigration attorneys that are passionate, not
Yeah.
just about, it's not a practice. You don't go into immigration law to make a whole bunch of money. It's you go in it. Of course, everybody wants to make, we work because we want to make money, but we want to use that money and our energy to
Yeah.
benefit those that deserve the help that we can provide.
Yes. Can
Again, as I'm,
navigate the system, help them navigate the system because there are systems, there are processes in place to help immigrants get the resources that they need. And even as you said, like donations and plug into different communities or free whatever there is. And
yeah,
we need people to stand in the gap for that global impact, right? There are immigrants who need to come here to be safe, to raise their family, to give their families opportunities. And I just love that you have such a passion to help those people to do that. Like, we need people to specialize in immigration law specifically, especially now. Like, we need this. And
yeah,
I just want to say, well done, my friend, because I can't think of a better person to be helping immigrants to navigate this very, let's call it what it is, confusing system. Like, even as someone who's not an immigrant, dealing with anything with the government to apply for anything is confusing,
right, right, right,
much less trying to become a citizen
yeah,
or get a
yeah,
work visa or just come
yeah,
into the country legally. Like, it's, yeah. So I am so proud of you. Before we close up, you know that I have a huge passion for creativity and I love the way that you create. I've been able to witness it a few times in the trips we've gone on, but your primary creative method is actually still through movement.
yeah.
And I've seen you dance in resort gyms. I've seen you dance in conference spaces. I've seen you dance in restaurants.
Yeah.
I've seen you lift weights, I've seen you run, I've seen you do all the things that I'm like, "Okay, yeah, I can get up at 7 a.m. even though it feels like I should be on vacation. I am just gonna move my body." Look at that woman go. You shared with me that rejuvenating movement, especially outdoors where nature fuels your energy and creativity, is your primary creative processing method, but what I'd really
Yeah.
love for you to talk about is how, obviously, we know that you're an immigration lawyer, you have a full practice now, you live a very full life. How do you still incorporate movement in this creative way into your everyday life with
Yeah.
everything else that's going on?
Yeah, Danielle, I tell you, for me right now is it's my energizer bunny, I guess. It's the
Yeah.
way to rejuvenate. It's the way to get the energy that I need. A perfect example, I was up this morning and I went for a run, 5 miles.
Wow.
And I planned it the day before. I know the day before, at least I have an idea as to what I'm going to do. And then I just get up and do it. Yesterday, Over the holidays, my husband and I decided to get mountain bikes. This is something that he
Wow.
wanted for a very long time, and we had not done it. And now you don't know how many times I've said to him, this is the best purchase that I've made in 2024. I am learning to mountain bike. It's nothing that I have done ever before. But yesterday afternoon, he asked me, what are you going to do today? And I'm like, I'm going to go to the trail. And he's, are you going to go by yourself? I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go by myself, because when I'm by myself, I don't feel as like pressure. I can do what I can do.
Yeah.
And I did 3 trails. It took me about an hour. It takes you like, I don't know, in those 3 trails, I probably was like 3 miles, because I'm going very slow. There is branches and there is, what do they call it? Hurdles or whatever, advanced something.
Yeah.
But I tell you, one of the things that I decided I'm going to do this at least once a week, that I'm going to take the mountain bike and go on the mountain bike trails. Because one thing that I believe we all need is to figure out a way to disconnect your mind from whatever is going on. Even if I'm running, I'm thinking about work. If I'm cycling, I'm thinking about work. The cycling that I'm comfortable with. That cycling I'm not comfortable with, the mountain bike. So my brain needs to stop thinking about everything else, because if I don't pay attention to the trail, I'm going to end up on the ground or injured. So
That's
I
it.
just have to focus, and it's like almost in a flow state, because I'm doing it enough that there is enough challenge that I can just focus on flow without being like, the first time I went to the trail, it was overwhelming. That was not flow. I was like, out of here.
Yeah.
But now that I'm getting used to it, I'm like, this is perfect. This is, so whatever it is for, I believe we're going to be hearing more and more about this. Just take a walk after lunch or dinner, or
Yeah.
just figure out a way to disconnect, because we all need it. So
Yes.
that's my message to your community. One of the ways to be worthy to our own selves is to take care of us, whatever that may be. Like, it could be cryotherapy, it could be whatever. For me, my newest thing is mountain biking. It's flowy enough that it gives me a challenge without overwhelming me. But we all need to make a very concerted effort to take care of us so that we can take care of others.
That is so good. I just took so many notes right there. I really love how you focused on really how you connected movement to taking time to disconnect your mind from the chaos, to focus on the movement, right? And that movement is actually what brings you into flow mode. And then how you said, yeah, one of the ways to be worthy to our own selves is to take care of ourselves. If you believe that you are created worthy, and even if you don't believe that you're created worthy, but you know that it's true, go move your body. Go move your body,
Yeah.
or drink water. Do something to take care of your body. Yes. Drink
Cheers.
water. Cheers. If you're not on the YouTube video, we are
Yeah.
cheersing over the phone. We're going to take a moment to take a sip of water. So if you're listening, take a sip of water.
Yes.
And that is just so profound. I love that you made that connection there, because you're right. It's not just about the words. It's not just about what you do. It's really about being intentional about caring for who you are. And so you do that, you exemplify that so beautifully in obviously the work that you do, but also in making sure that you are prioritizing your mind and prioritizing your body and prioritizing the things that you can do to really care for yourself and keep your mind in a space where it is about serving others well. And if you're so consumed with your own chaos, then you're not going to serve anyone. You're not going to serve your family. You're not going to serve your kids. You're not going to serve yourself. You're just going to be stuck in that place of confusion and chaos. So get out of it. And it doesn't have to be complicated. I love that.
No.
So, Giselle, Tell us what is coming up next for you in your life and business. I know you shared about this new book that's coming out. I know that you've got some exciting things happening in 2025. So just share a little bit about what is going on with you coming up.
Yeah, so I've been working on this book, and again, this is my work in progress of my manuscript. But again, I've worked with you on this before, and I have 11 chapters right now, and every time I work on a new chapter, I think of you
Oh,
because you're so good. You're so good at helping us put our words out. I mean, I remember you giving us ideas of music that we could use to stimulate creativity as we wrote if we have writer's block. So thank you, Danielle, because all of those little
course.
tips, they're helping me get my thoughts on this new book that I'm putting together. It's going to launch next year, 2025. And I encourage you, if someone in your community wants to continue this journey and cheer me on, I'm all about cheers and support. They
Yes.
can connect with me on LinkedIn at Giselle Carson, and I'm posting some pieces of the book and the journey. I'm also going to be, so the book is not just, so it's Corporate Immigration Advantage, how to hire, retain, and thrive with foreign talent in a global economy. But it's not a book about the legal. It has some legal, obviously, that's what I do. But a lot of stories of immigration, stories of the resilience, the determination that it takes. And I even go into breathing practices and tips to calm ourselves down through all the emotional distress. So there's a little bit of everything in there, all flowing with the storytelling through it, which I'm very proud of how it's coming out. And to some degree, thanks to you, because of everything that you taught us as we were putting the All Out Impact book together.
I'm so
Your
proud of you.
impact continues, your impact continues. So that's
Like
what I've been working on.
that just is so encouraging to me. I cannot tell you, I'm tearing up because that's my hope, that's my prayer every time I do anything and lead any service that I lead is I just want the work that I do to be something that carries on and inspires you to continue sharing and impacting people and diving into your own creative giftings and sharing your own story. And so the fact that you're doing that and you're using some of the resources that I've shared, it's just such a huge blessing to me. So I am so proud of you. I'm so excited. I want to read your book for sure. I want to share about it as well. Can you tell us a little bit about, you said LinkedIn, is that the primary place to connect with you?
Yeah. It's probably, we have a website, Mark's Gray, but for the firm, that's the firm that I
Yeah.
work at. There is I think 20 attorneys there now. So the most direct route is LinkedIn.
Yes. Perfect.
It's-
And we'll have all of
I
your
love to connect. Yep.
Perfect. And we'll have all of her links in the show notes as well. But before you go, I just want to share a little piece of encouragement with you. So, Giselle, your story is a testament to the power of resilience, determination, and purpose. From your journey as a two-time immigrant to your unparalleled accomplishments in corporate immigration law and your athletic endeavors, you embody what it means to turn challenges into opportunities. Your passion for empowering businesses and individuals shines so brightly, and the impact you make is far felt and wide. Thank you so much for sharing your brilliance and inspiring others to approach life and work with the same energy and drive that defines what you do. You are created worthy.
Hey, friend. Thanks for listening to my story on the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that you feel inspired to take bold steps and empower yourself and others. Together, we can create lasting positive change. I am sure of that. We got this together.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to the Created Worthy podcast. I hope that today's show resonated with you, and if it did, can you do me a huge favor and go leave a 5-star review? This helps more listeners find the show, and it expands the reach of the stories and concepts that are shared here. All the links and guest information are in the show notes. And if you're on social media, come hang out with me. You can find the Created Worthy podcast on both Instagram and Facebook, or come follow along with my personal IG page, where I just share more about the real, sometimes messy life of your fellow worthy warrior. Can't wait to talk to you soon, friend. And don't forget, we are all created worthy.